Okay, last night, whoops, let's get rid of that, shall we? Create a new one. Last night we did asynchronous closures running on a serial queue. Tonight we're doing synchronous closures. Whoops. On a serial queue. My little fractured fairy tales exit. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to show you the main queue, and the main queue again is a special queue in the app that handles most of the interaction. Not most, it handles the interaction between the user interacting with the GUI and the run loop for the queue, picking up those events, and it runs on the main thread. Whoops. And this is the main queue. I'm trying a different pen tonight. It's clearer, but it means my penmanship has to be a little bit more precise. Let's try that again. There we go. I'll get the hang of it. Little I with a dot there. Good. And so as before, we're running the application, instructions happen, and at some point the user calls dispatch queue. And that creates a serial queue. The nature of a serial queue is that it provides you one at a time task execution with a guarantee of mutual exclusivity. So one task does not start until another task completes, no matter if the tasks are synchronous or asynchronous. So we've created the serial queue. It has its own NS run loop and its own worker thread. The worker thread will control the firing of other threads which will run the submitted tasks. Okay, so that's the job of that worker thread. It's to spawn, it's the word used, other threads in order to run the tasks. So now we'll run some more tasks here, and at a certain point we decide we're going to do a dispatch sync. Now last night we did a dispatch async. Tonight we're doing a dispatch sync of a closure. We're going to call it C1 again. And C1 is simply going to be, it takes no parameters and returns nothing. And in this case, we're just going to say print a closure. Okay, so that's what we're submitting. And we're going to submit it to the serial queue, a worker thread, a spawn, I don't know what to call this. I guess I should call this something else, because these are really the worker threads. Oops, what happened to my pen? Oh, somehow it got turned to white. That happened to me last night too. So you can tell because of the little, it's drawing white lines to my black lines. So C1 ends up over here now, and it's running on its own thread, which has been pulled from the GCD thread pool. The most important thing to remember about the thread pool is that there are a limited number of threads. The ideal is that you'll have a single thread running on a single core. So for example, you have 4 cores on your machine. You're going to ideally have your thread running on 1 core. That's ideal. Doesn't usually happen that way. There's usually a lot of interleaving, but that's the idea. So here we are, and now we're going to begin executing. The run loop is executing up here, going and saying, have you got any work? Have you got any work? Have you got any work? And now we say, yes, there's work. So the thread starts running, and it starts executing. because it's sync, what happens over here? What happens over here is that we had execution, execution, execution now stops. The main thread is blocked, meaning no further instructions happen while this is going over here, right? So at some point, this thread finishes. The thread is returned back to the thread pool after it was pulled off the thread pool to start out. Because nothing's returned, nothing else happens other than that the print statement was executed. And word goes back to the main thread that the task is done, and so it is unblocked. There, I guess over there, that's where I have them. Right. And now instructions once again begin executing over here. So there's unblocked here. Now this will happen when you submit any task in a dispatch sync from the main queue to the serial queue. One interesting thing does happen because we're submitting from a queue that is QoS interactive class. Actually, that's not true. I was about to say it will be translated to QoS user-initiated class. But as a matter of fact, that's not true. That only happens with an async submission. So this will, I believe it will stay QoS user interactive, but I'll check on that. So that's the way a sync submission to a serial queue works.